If you are building a studio, one of the fundamental building blocks of the entire process is monitor placement. To properly place those monitors in the optimum position, you are going to need some stands. I'm going to show you how I built the stands that I use in my studio. They're sturdy, they have a leveling mechanism that helps reduce coupling. They can be filled with sand to even further reduce what little resonance they have, as they are made from MDF or medium density fiberboard. They include a very inexpensive DIY solution for a speaker isolation pad, which helps the speaker float in space, and I like the way they look. They're very inexpensive and very simple to build. This video is one in a series that I'm making on the build of my studio, Studio 5x5. Proper monitor stands are necessary. When I first started shopping around for these things, I was absolutely shocked at the cost of these, at least for the ones that I considered worthy of the very, to me, expensive speakers that I just purchased. I tend to prioritize function over form, so my projects can look a little rough until I decide whether or not they're a keeper. And at that point I can polish them up with a little putty and a little paint and make them a little more appealing to look at in my studio. To build these stands, you're going to first need to determine the height that you will want your monitors. Unless you are working at a standing desk, you're going to need a chair. This is a very important and usually downplayed purchase. You don't have to spend a ton of money, but if you can, it is worth shelling out a little bit more money to get something that's built a little better. You are going to need to be comfortable in your chair. You are going to be spending a lot of time in this thing. Choose wisely. Once you set a comfortable working height for your chair, you can establish the height of your monitors. Usually, people try to align their ears with a midpoint on a monitor. You don't have to have the exact measurements up front. You have some wiggle room. In the construction process, you can make the pedestal a few inches longer and cut it to length when you establish the height of your monitors. You can also gain a few inches of wiggle room in height by getting longer bolts for the leveling mechanism on the bottom of the speaker stand. You may hear me refer to them as speaker stands or speakers. You may hear me refer to them as monitors or monitor stands. These are the exact same things. Monitor stands are speaker stands. Speakers are monitors. As I mentioned earlier, this is one in a series of videos. In one of the other videos in this series, I will show you how I established my listening position and the proper placement of my monitors. I purposely made the base significantly larger to add to the stability of these stands. The inside squares the outline of my speaker. The larger square is the size of the base, and that's what we're going to cut out. The little circles in the four corners are where I'm going to drill a hole through for the leveling bolts. I'm going to cut 2 of these larger squares. I'm going to slather them in glue, and I'm going to screw them together very tightly. That way they'll make one very thick piece for the base. I've tried to keep the tool list to a minimum so anybody can gather these or borrow them. All you need is a drill, a single drill bit, and a Phillips head driver, or the driver that comes with the finished screws. The finished screws I mentioned will come with this bit included in the box. These are the finish screws that I used in this project. I used them because they're quite strong and the head is very small, leaving not much of a scar in your project. You're going to need a drill bit for pilot holes. Make sure your drill bit is a smaller diameter than the finish screw you're using. Today we're going to be making a mono stand. I have some 3/4 inch MDF left over from when I made my stereo pair. Most lumberyards will sell you a half sheet. You can also get them to cut it. Sometimes it'll cost you a bit, sometimes they'll do it for free.
Go.
I assembled the pedestal this way so I'd have a hollow space in the middle. This way I could fill it with sand or shot to reduce any vibrations.
When I'm 16, I wish I was a billionaire. I wish I could upgrade a car with a GPS. I hope I have a good home with people I love.
One other reason I like this design is because if all the cuts are good and you make certain all your edges are plumb as you assemble it, it will pull itself true as you put it together. To start with, I'm just tacking the pedestal together with one finish screw on either end. Clamps would be really helpful in this situation if you have them.
I hope flying cars get invented and solar powered thingamajigs. I hope I have a good home with people I love.
I'm drilling pilot holes for all the finish screws. MDF can split really badly if you don't drill pilot holes. This is a necessity. The finish screws also pull the pieces of the pedestal together. This acts as kind of a clamp, making a very strong structure when the glue dries.
I hope I have a good home with people I love. I hope the world is a good place to live in.
Now that the pedestal's dry, I'm going to use a chop saw to cut off the end. This will give me a nice square end to attach the top and the bottom. The top and bottom that I'm using in this video are from a previous failed attempt at this very speaker stand. The length of the pedestal has been predetermined by the measurements I set before. This is the piece I'm going to use for the top. As you can see, it's painted, so I need to sand some of that paint off, and that'll let my glue stick. This is a speed square. This is one of my favorite tools for building stuff. If you want to know more about a speed square, there's loads of videos on YouTube about them. I'm going to use it to map out a grid so I can center the pedestal. I'm drilling more pilot holes here so I don't split the end of my pedestal, causing the top to not sit properly. Now that that's on, we're going to let the glue dry for another 24 hours. Here's the base of the stand we're going to use from my previous attempt that I talked about earlier. As you can see, it's two of those same size pieces that we cut earlier. I coated one side of each of the pieces with a copious amount of wood glue. I then screwed them together with simple drywall screws that I had lying around. Alright, if you saw that, the pedestal stayed in place and the base spun around. That's because one of my screws didn't catch. Now we're going to let it dry again for another 24 hours. Alright, I tried using a spray primer and the MDF just absorbed it, so that's why the top of this thing is all white. It was a fairly windy day that day, so I didn't feel the need to wear my respirator. It's also a testament to how stable this stand is. It didn't wobble at all in that heavy wind.
I hope the zombie apocalypse. It hasn't happened by then.
Now we'll let the primer dry overnight. I didn't really mind using the white because, as you saw earlier, my mono speaker is red and it made things all kind of matchy-matchy. The leveling mechanism is very simple. The more threads that are showing as you tighten a bolt, the higher the base will be off the ground. The fewer threads you have showing as you loosen the nut, the closer the base will be to the ground. Each corner has one bolt, two nuts, and one washer. The washer is there to spread the load. The second nut is simply a locking nut. The floor of my studio is a concrete slab that's kind of wonky, and that's why I needed to come up with a solution for leveling these stands. Since this is my mono check speaker, I want it directly in front of me, perfectly centered between my two mains. Here I'm going back and forth, making very small adjustments to the leveling bolts. I am trying to get the stand level, and I'm trying to get the weight equally distributed on each of the 4 bolts. This makes the stand incredibly stable. I made my mono stand from the bits I had left over making my mains, the red ones you see here. They are the exact same process, just slightly larger dimensions. As I said earlier in the video, I prefer function over form. I put these together pretty quickly and kind of in a sloppy manner. I used drywall screws, I didn't countersink them, and these have held up very well. My mains were much larger and heavier than my mono check speaker. I needed a much beefier stand for these speakers. I also used larger leveling bolts to make up for the extra weight. To isolate my monitors from my stands, I cut up a yoga mat. I used one of the ones that kind of behaves like neoprene. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you took away enough information that you can build yourself a pair of these stands, or at least know that it is possible to build your own. Please like and subscribe, and join me for my next video where I'll show you how I built the broadband absorption panels that I use in my studio. Bye. So what do I do? Just start talking into this thing?